Buenas tardes, compañeros de la Universidad Casa, Grande, Hugo, María. Es para nosotros del Fondo de Cesantía una satisfacción trabajar otra tarde con ustedes. A los señores participantes en esta webinar, bienvenidos sean todos. Creo que lo que aprendemos en las webinars de la Universidad Casa Grande nos permiten seguir mejorando. Creo que para todos es importante el tema del inglés. Muchas personas no lo manejamos a profundidad y nos es muy difícil a veces lograr captar, pero como tenemos un excelente traductor y las láminas que son muy didácticas, nos permite a la vez ir avanzando con el tema. Gracias a ustedes por permitirnos que padres de familia, maestros y todo el público logren a través de estas webinars tener un mejor acceso al inglés y mejorar cada día como seres humanos. Sean todos muy buenas tardes. Les doy el paso a Hugo. Una linda tarde a todos.
Well, good afternoon, everyone. Thank you, Norma. Thanks to the Fondo de Cesantía and Universidad Casa Grande for giving us the opportunity to be here in this interesting webinar with Dr. Margot Guillot. A little bit of her, she's from Colombia, but she's been living in the US for many years. She's a teacher of our master program at Universidad Casa Grande. She holds a PhD in Spanish from Tulane University. Thank you, Margot, for being here.
Hello, everyone. It's an absolute pleasure to be here with you today. And I hope to provide you a few tips that you can use in your classroom. I'm sorry, that you can use with your students, because I know you're not teaching in the classroom. A little bit about me. Just so you know, I have not left my home since March of 2020. I've been in my house. Like you, I teach from home. Like you, I am seeking ways to improve how to teach exclusively in this virtual environment. We were thrust into this, nobody was prepared, and we're all having to make the best that we can under the circumstances. I've been very lucky in that I have taught all levels of education. I've taught primary, middle school, high school, and college. My last few years I've been teaching at the university level. Now it's all different. All those things that I thought I knew and would work in the classroom are different because we are in a different space. But my philosophy in life has always been that when life serves you lemons, you have to make lemonade. So we're all in this trying to make the best lemonade possible, trying to find ways that we can help our children learn from this remote environment. And everybody knows we're all in this together, so the whole world is feeling what you're feeling. In the United States, we have the same issues you have. And many of our students don't have access to the internet either. So we're all sort of experiencing the same thing. Because I've done a little research on you and I understand a little bit about what's going on, your current situation involves the fact that you're teaching online or with packets. You're using weekly features. Now these features, I've taken a look at them, and they're very well designed to help the students learn because they've integrated the topics and the subjects and asked the students to do projects to engage them in the learning. And what we know about learning is that when students are engaged and they're able to use what they're learning, they in fact are learning it. So I commend you for using these features. What if, and here's my what if offer, what if you had some tools that you could use to help your students learn in this independent environment? That's a what if question that I'm going to offer you today. A little more about your current situation that I found out. Many students do not have access to the internet. But just so you know, like I'm repeating myself, but we have the same problem here in the United States. In my community, many students don't have access to the internet. Where possible, you're going to homes, to the student homes, to provide them the packets of learning. And for that, I commend you, because I know that that's going over and above the call of duty. Unfortunately, you're not able to provide much needed feedback to your students. And by that, I mean, when I drive along the road and all of a sudden I hear boom, 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 that's telling me, Margot, get back on the road. You're not on track. And I get feedback. You're not able to tell your kids that they're not on track. You're not able to tell them that directly. So we have to find ways to figure that out, because they need your feedback. They need your support. And I understand that doing the work is voluntary for the students. But again, what if you could insert some learning strategies to help your students better understand the material? Insert because you already have the features that you're working with. So I'm offering you a virtual invitation for some quick ideas and reminders for teaching English during this pandemic. Some of these you already know, and you just need a little reminder. Some of these may be new to you, and some may be a little more difficult for the students that you teach, but we're going to try and see what works for you. For example, when students are asked to read a text in English, here are some ideas to share with them, so that instead of being, oh, I don't know what this means, I don't know what to do, I'm not going to do it, and they quit, they give up, they're totally confused. We want them to say, I think I get it. I think I'll give it a try. I think I'm going to stick with this task. I'm not giving up. That's what we want. So here is a little bit of something you know, but again, it's a reminder, the importance of word order in English. And I'm going to illustrate it by using nonsense words, words that have absolutely no sense whatsoever in English. The words that I have highlighted in yellow are nonsense words, don't mean anything. But because of the placement in the sentence, they tell us something. Or maybe something that's been added to the nonsense word. All right, so oogly plumped the gump fastly because he was gaunty. Well, who did something? Well, oogly did. How do we know? It's at the beginning of the sentence. It looks like somebody's name. What did oogly do? Plump the gump. Oh, so how did oogly plump the gump? Fastly. When did oogly plump the gump? Yesterday. Now that's not a nonsense word, but it's a word, a common word that we all know. Why did he do it? Because he was gaunty. Now you've been able to answer 5 questions and not know at least 5 of the words in the sentence because of word order. But here's the last question. Will he want to do it again? I'm not sure we can answer that question not knowing the meaning of the words in the sentence. But you could answer 5 of them. So word order is really important in English. And the first verb is plumped in that sentence. Then how do we know it's a verb? Well, it's right after the subject, and it has ed added to it. So it's in the past tense. Plus, we know it's yesterday. And remember that the noun always comes before the verb in English. Well, almost always. There is an exception, like in everything. So exceptions to word order, for example, there are people. Are is a verb and people is a subject. Comes after the verb. There is no milk. Milk is a subject. Is a verb after. The first one, there are people who believe, is taken from one of your features. So some possible reminders for the kids is to give them some things that maybe they learned already or they're in the process of learning, just to remind them the present tense of the verb to be, for example, and some high frequency words that they might need to reflect on. Every sentence begins with a capital letter and ends with N punctuation. So let's see which of these are sentences and which are not. John wants to build a house. Is that a complete sentence? John begins with a capital letter and there's a period at the end. The right verb. So yes, that is a complete sentence. There is trees in the forest. Uh-oh, there's that word there. And trees is a subject, but is not matched up with trees. It doesn't agree. So that is not a complete sentence. There are trees in the forest. And here's some letters just kind of strewn out there. H-E-H-O-P-S. Obviously, that's not a sentence. But what if we push those letters together? Ah, now you have he hops. Now that's a sentence. There are no animals. Again, here's there. Are is the verb and animals is the subject. It has a period at the end, starts with a capital letter. Is it a sentence? Yes. You cut down the trees. Starts with a capital Y and ends with a period. The right verb. So yes. What happened? Starts with a W, capital W, question word, happened, question mark. Is that a complete sentence? Yes. What about this word? It's just one word, run. Is that a complete sentence? Yes. Run is a complete sentence. It's understood you as a subject. It's a command with an exclamation mark, capital R and exclamation. Yes, it's a complete sentence. All right. So to write a complete sentence, we have to remind the students that the sentence has to express a complete thought and that the heart of the sentence is the verb. A single verb with end punctuation can be a complete sentence, as we saw with run. Capital letter, end punctuation, verb, understood you, complete sentence. But remember this, that without a verb, there is no sentence. And end punctuation is really important because it tells you there's a meaning section here. Is jump a complete sentence? Yes, because it's capital letter, it's a verb, ends with an exclamation mark, understood you? Yes, it's a complete sentence. What about she runs? Has a subject and a verb, capital letter, and punctuation. Again, another sentence. So the sentences don't have to be long to be complete. But how can we make some interesting sentences? Well, she runs, as we found out, was a complete sentence. But what if we said she runs in the yard? Now it tells us where she runs. And what if we said she runs every morning? It tells us when she runs. Oh, but what if we put together both of those and says she runs in the yard every morning? Now we have an interesting sentence that tells us when and where she runs. How about these? She likes. We go. Are those complete sentences? Don't think so. Something's missing. What is missing? Well, it's a complement that's missing. She likes needs a complement. She likes what? A word or a phrase that completes the thought. Remember I said every sentence has to be a complete thought. So, she likes to play. Oh, now we've completed it. And if we add she likes to play on her telephone, now we have a nice, interesting, complete sentence. The same thing goes with we go. We go where? To the park. We go to the park to swim. Now it's an interesting sentence telling us where we go and why we go. So you see, sometimes you have to have the complement. Every sentence needs a verb, and sometimes it needs a complement. Break down the sentence to understand it. So here's a sentence. These are real words. These are not nonsense words, but they're still highlighted in yellow. John jumped quickly yesterday in the yard because he was scared. Who or what did something? Well, John did. Well, what did he do? He jumped. Do you know how? Yes, he jumped quickly. Do you know when? Yesterday. Do you know where? In the yard. And do you know why? Because he was scared. Now, Once again, you're able to answer the questions, but here's the kicker. Do you know if he will do it again? Now this time, since we know the meaning of the words, we will probably infer that he might not because he was scared. This was taken from your features. This is Semana 6. And I'm going to read the text, but I want you to notice how important punctuation is to help me understand the text. Nostradamus, a man who saw the future. In Saint-Rémy-de-Provence, France, in 1503, a child was born who later treated victims of the plague in France and Italy. Not much is known about his childhood. What we know is that he was a very intelligent child. He managed to pass school quickly and without difficulties. He studied Greek, Latin, Hebrew, and mathematics, and his grandfather taught him astrology. At age 14, he entered the University of Avignon to study medicine. This man became a world celebrity, not because of his medical skills, but because of his predictions. There were and there are people who believe that Michel de Nostradame, better known as Nostradamus, could see the future. His prophecies are known to this day, and some still believe that what he said hundreds of years ago will come true in the future. So I want you to, did you hear the punctuation stops? Because every one of those has meaning. Now, to help the students with this text, it would have been interesting perhaps to tell them ahead of time some of the words that are similar to Spanish. Of course, France, Francia, victims, víctima, plague, plaga, intelligent, inteligente, difficulties, dificultades, Latin, Latin, Hebrew, Hebreo, mathematics, university, entered. All of those are very similar to the word in Spanish. They already know it. So that would have given them a sense of security of, oh, I know those words. Look how many words I already know. So that they are better able, and then give them a heads up of there were and there are, because that's sort of a little different. There were and there are people who believe. Okay, so that would have been a good thing to do, to give the students a heads up of the words that are already like Spanish, and a little bit on there were and there are. What if you ask the students to explain with words or pictures what happened in the story? Stop when you get to a period to help you understand. In other words, in addition to whatever it is that they're supposed to do for the ficha, that you give them a little support. So that would have been a little bit easier for them to read the text. Now, in this particular assignment, they had to read and underline the verbs in the following text. Write the verbs and their meanings on your notebook. So again, this text is not as dense as the other one. What if you offered a target vocabulary list to the students? Just a target list. If you know the level of your student and what they know and don't know, what they should have learned, you can give them more words, even more, just to kind of be very comfortable with the text they're going to read. Knowing the vocabulary is very important when you're trying to understand text. Some of these words are high frequency, but some are not. So again here, the students would have had some of these words and identified, and now they can underline the verbs and figure out the meanings because you've already anticipated some of it for them. Now, let's talk a little bit about writing in English. Students are also asked to write. They may have to respond to questions. They may need to write sentences or may need to write a paragraph. So for example, when students were asked to write a paragraph like this one, this came from one of the fichas, how do you think that the world will be in 2050? Do you believe there are going to be a lot of climate changes in the future? If so, which changes? They had to write more than just a sentence here. So I'm going to share with you something that might be interesting. We know that the students don't have to do the work. So how do we help them? Here's a picture of a building with a lot of supports, trusses and boards and metal supports. Those are there to help that building so it doesn't fall down before it's finished. And just as the building has those supports, we need to provide that kind of, they call those scaffolding, that kind of scaffolding to help the students learn on their own. Because if you just give them something like that and they don't have any support, they're going to get frustrated and quit. They're not going to want to continue. So, review writing a paragraph. It's kind of like making a sandwich. You start with a piece of bread, also called the topic sentence, add some ingredients to the middle, which are your transition sentences, and finish the sandwich with another piece of bread or the conclusion sentence. Here's a visual to look at. Topic sentence, first example, second example, third, and so forth. So here's a visual for a paragraph. Now, if you're able to give the students a mentor text that they can look at, like a model, in other words, you as a teacher developed a little text. You as a teacher developed a little paragraph. You share it with the students. And this is an example of the kind of thing you're going to be asked to do. They use it to help them write. Now, they do need to refer to the mentor text, and they may have to have some more support because you're not there in the classroom to guide them. But they will get through it. Here's a sample mentor text, the topic sentence. Sometimes children must help with family chores. First example. For example, they may help by washing dishes or taking care of pets. They are learning to be responsible. Another example is helping when parents are busy working. They're helping take stress off their parents. Older children can help with younger children at home. And then the conclusion, these chores help the family and help children learn important lessons. So it's a little example of a mentor text that they could use to follow as they're asked to write a paragraph on their own. But it's one that you develop or that, follows a model and gives them a way to know what to do next. It's a model, it's an example that they can refer to. So remember this assignment. How do you think the world will be in 2050? Do you believe there are going to be a lot of climate changes in the future? If so, which changes? Remember that? Well, what if you gave them some mentor text starters? Where the topic sentence you would say, in 2050, the world will, first example. For example, there may be, second example. Another example is, final example. Yet another example is, a conclusion. These examples will. So you give them a little starters. You can even shorten it. You can say in 2050, blank, blank, blank. For example, blank, 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 depending on the level of your student. But if they need a lot of support, you may have to provide them a little more. Going to refer to the stages of learning because at this point in the game, we are facing students learning on their own in many cases. But if you're in the classroom, you as a teacher, I do, you the student watch. In the classroom, the next stage, I the teacher, I do, and you the student help. Look at the kids with their hands up. And if you're working with the kids and they're doing the work and you're helping them, you the student do, and I help. I am the teacher. And finally, the students work on their own. You, the student, do, and I watch. Well, because it's all online and so forth, there's a danger that they could be going from just to you do and I watch. Well, we don't want that. So here's a visual of the gradual release of responsibility in a regular classroom. This particular schema works in any situation, at any grade level, and university, primary, wherever. Same story. I do, you watch. I do, you help. You do, I help. You do, I watch. Where the teacher has more input at the beginning and the student has most input at the end. But we're not in a regular classroom, you say. And you're right. So what now? Well, if you have technology access, good technology access, you can still provide a lot of supports that we just talked about. You can do the little videos, you can do a lot of stuff still. However, and they feel like, oh, I'm getting help, I'm getting support. So I'm going to stick to the task, I'm not giving up, I'm going to do this work. But what happens when you have no technology access? Well, if you're lucky and you're able to provide them some mentor texts and supports and perhaps even make some notes on the features or whatever, so that the students have a better appreciation of what's going to happen in that particular feature. Then the students feel like they are getting some support so they can stick with the task and continue and get it finished. What we don't want is where the packet's delivered and there is, go you do your work on your own. We don't want that because the students will quickly give up. And if you're not with no technology, you're still able to provide support through at the beginning, even when you deliver the features to the classroom, to the children in their homes. So they feel like, I am getting help. I can do this. I'm going to stick to the task. Another possibility for short answers, and this might be for the students that are a little more advanced, but the question about what would you do if you were the president of Ecuador, one way to answer that question is to follow the process called RACER. Each letter represents a step in the process. R is for repeat, A is for answer, C is for cite, E is for explain, and R is for repeat. And I'll illustrate that. So repeat means that you're repeating the question, basically, but in a statement form. If I were president of Ecuador, I would make some decisions. Now you're answering the question. So what would you do? I would require that everyone wear a mask. Now you have to give evidence of why you're doing that. Since we have not been able to flatten the curve, we need to continue with extreme precautions. Then you have to explain about that evidence. This is necessary to protect those most at risk for COVID-19. And then at the end, you repeat, that is what I would do if I were president at this time. This is from Ficha Semana 5. But the best thing you can do right now, my friends, trust me, is to get with your colleagues and share. Nobody has the answer. We're all in this together, but we all have to share what we're learning and what works. What is working in situations, in different situations. And you have friends, you have colleagues, please talk to them. So here is what some of your colleagues in the public system are doing right now. These were are some of my students from Casa Grande University. Miguel Ángel Rivera Calderón got his master's from Casa Grande. He teaches at Atahualpa High School at Calceta City in Manabí, Ecuador. This is what he says. One example that is working for me, I prepare my own PowerPoint presentation of the feature, and I adapt it to the class time. At the beginning, I open the class with a little video related to the class. For week 6, I placed a video to make students think about a better environment. If they can read my slides, they're better able to reflect on the reading. They also talk about their experiences with the environment. I use Teams, Zoom, or WhatsApp with my students. Unfortunately, not all have internet access, so I deliver materials to them and explain what they have to do. I am both a tutor and a teacher. I tutor the oldest students. Obviously, the picture of Miguel here is before COVID. This was last year. Here is Diego Paul Bonifaz, who also got his master's degree from Casa Grande. He teaches in La Maná Parish, Cotopaxi, in Ecuador. I copy the section that my students are working on so they do not get confused. I share it in different WhatsApp groups. I give them an explanation and I have meetings for as many as possible. I record the audios with materials they need for the week and share materials related to the topic. I offer strategies like highlighting words similar to Spanish, like adaptation, culture, previous, to gain some comfort and learn new vocabulary. I worry about the amount of homework students have to focus on the computer for so many hours. I am a tutor and focus on my groups in English. That's what Paul does. And here is Giancarlo Romero Mejia. He teaches at Liceo Galapagos in the Galapagos Islands. He is still a candidate in the master's program. I have worked since week 4 on the features that contain English activities and used WhatsApp to send my student group a reminder of the features pages that they should work. Additionally, I send the authors audios for each activity, which I suggest that my students listen to in order to practice reading and their pronunciation at home. All the time, I tell my students that if they do not understand any activity, I will help them. Using WhatsApp, I interact with my students to practice writing, and for those who do not use WhatsApp or do not have internet connection, I send it directly to their parents, to their phones on WhatsApp. And that seems to be working well for him as well. So here are some reminders from me. If at all possible, please get to know your students. Let them know about you. Use their names if possible when you produce any teaching videos or when you're making any notes on their papers or whatever. It lets them know that you really care when you use a person's name. Let them know how much you support what they're learning because they're on their own. They need your help. Let them know you're not just a WhatsApp message. And if at all possible, find a way to pre-teach what they will learn in this week's feature. Break it down for them. Make it simple. Some suggestions. If you can communicate with your students, tell them to take short breaks and try to relate what they read to something they already know or something in their surroundings. And something that's already included in the feature that I thought was really good, where possible, ask them to try out what they have learned with the people in the house with them. If we agree that learning looks scary for the student's perspective, here's a student looking at crossing this bridge, not sure if that bridge is going to make it. Can I do it? Am I going to be able to do it? It's a scary moment. Then, as the teacher, carefully read the feature for the week. Ask yourself, what help would I need if I were the student doing this work? Do they need help reading the text? Do they need help writing the text? Students may not be penalized if they don't do the work. However, ask yourselves, what little tricks or supports can I offer? Perhaps a video that I found that's appropriate for the new feature, like Mike did from Calcera City. He found it for the environment. Perhaps a new app that can use creatively, provided they have internet access. Perhaps a little practice on a skill that needs refreshing. Perhaps a reminder to connect them their learning with what they're doing, because sometimes it's just words on a page and they need to connect it to something. Perhaps some questions they could ask you like Gian does in Galapagos. How I can help my students, perhaps use WhatsApp like Gian in the Galapagos. He uses it a lot because evidently the internet is not very available over there. Perhaps find words that sound like Spanish in the text like Paul did from La Maná. Perhaps build your own PowerPoint to share each time with your students like Mike did from Calcera City. Perhaps, and more importantly, share your ideas with your colleagues. You have to think outside the box. This situation is not anything that anybody could have conceived. We are in it together, so your friends, your colleagues are your best support. Talk to them frequently and share your ideas. And most importantly, remember to breathe. Times are tough, and it's going to be a while before we can get through it, but we're going to get through it. I know it. And I'm so happy that you're trying, that you're here. The very fact that you're listening to this presentation lets me know how much you care, that you are really committed to your students, and I commend you for it. Thank you for your attention and best wishes.
Thanks, Ian Margaret, for your presentation. It was an excellent talk and some reminders of keywords like scaffolding and gradual release of responsibility. Thanks for sharing your tips. And now we have some questions. Okay. One of the participants asked, how can we adapt your suggestions in our virtual classes?
Well, in your virtual classes, you can do everything that I suggested. You can do the mentor text, you can do the vocabulary list, you can do the scaffolding, you can provide the word list, you can do basically everything. And most importantly, remember to get to know your students. Use their name, even when you're talking to them as a class through, like we're doing right now, through Zoom or whatever other medium you have. Get to know your students. That, to me, build that relationship. You're the main reason that they're doing the work. Their parents are busy, everybody's busy. You're the main reason, you're the motivator. So do whatever you can to get them, keep them on task, help them stay on what they're doing.
Okay, the second question. Will these activities work for different age type students?
Absolutely, they'll work with any age. They'll work as soon as they start learning English, and some of them will work even if you're not teaching English. You're teaching Spanish or you're teaching science, they'll work because they need support. They need, if they're reading something in Spanish for science, they'll need some of the words so they can see what are these words ahead of time. Some of these concepts that are so thick and dense that they have to plow through. They need the support. They're not going to make it on their own. Just reading the features is not going to be, is not enough. I mean, you're lucky to have the features, but just having that is not going to be enough. You're going to have to provide some supports along the way. Does that answer the question?
Absolutely. And the last question, how can I help my students with no internet?
Well, again, if you're delivering the features to them, because I think that's what Mike was doing, then you can write on the feature, make little notes so the student knows what to pay attention to, circle the words, or add a piece of paper with a little note that you have identified some words, or a little mentor text or something. You're going to have to do it with the paper because that's the only thing you have.
Yeah. Thank you, Margot. No more questions. And I love the sharing what our candidates or masters already are doing. And I think that's a great idea, that teachers share what they are doing so we can help one another in these difficult times.
That's the only way we're going to get through this, is sharing what's working here and what's working over there, because these are unrealistic times. We couldn't have planned for this. So sharing is the only way. Build some collegial conversations, some ways that you can talk to your colleagues from time to time and see, what did you do with this feature? What worked, what didn't work? That's the most important thing.
Yes. Okay. Hugo, you continue. Thanks, Marco, one more time.
Well,
Thanks,
it was my
Marco.
pleasure, and I hope that I'm just impressed that so many people are participating and want to hear about this, because this means that they really care. And I know that because I teach, as you said, for Casa Grande, and I know how much my students care about their students. So it's a pleasure, always a pleasure.
Thank you, Margot. Thank you, Margot. Thank you, Roxana. Gracias a todos por estar presentes. A continuación voy a compartir información general acerca del programa de maestría, del cual Margot es parte también como docente. Y los invitamos a que puedan, los que se animen, ¿no?, los que se animen a seguir avanzando en sus estudios, recordando siempre que la educación es la mejor inversión que podemos hacer en nosotros mismos, ¿no? Bien, creo que sí lo estamos viendo, ¿no? Bien, esta es nuestra oferta de posgrados, ¿no? De la Maestría en Pedagogía de los Idiomas Nacionales y Extranjeros, con mención en enseñanza en inglés. El perfil de ingreso para los postulantes es en sí profesionales en ciencias de la educación, lingüística inglesa, psicología, o quienes tengan un título en otra área con suficiencia en el idioma inglés, ya que la cátedra de la maestría es 100% en inglés, y que tenga experiencia en el ámbito educativo. Bien, esta es nuestra malla curricular. El programa dura 3 semestres o 3 ciclos, y a partir del segundo ciclo usted ya empieza su trabajo de titulación. Como podemos ver, estamos actualmente en una modalidad online, en la cual usted termina sus estudios en 18 meses, y los horarios de clases son usualmente sábados y domingos de 9 a 16 horas, y eventualmente viernes y sábados, ¿no? Dependiendo de la disponibilidad del docente. Bien, para la admisión al programa, usted debe de aprobar el curso propedéutico, en el cual se le dará conocimiento sobre ofimática, sobre nuestra plataforma Moodle, la plataforma de Universidad Casa Grande, y pensamiento abstracto. Bien, el certificado B2 de suficiencia en inglés, esto es un requisito, sin embargo, usted lo puede presentar mientras estudia su maestría. No es necesario que lo tenga en este momento si es que usted quiere ya empezar con nosotros, ¿no? Entre los exámenes o certificados que aceptamos de suficiencia en inglés están los de Cambridge, hablamos del FCE, por IELTS, el de Michigan, el ECCE, TOEFL, TOEIC, ITEP, Pearson, etc. Con 3 años o menos de vigencia, ¿no? Bien, esta es cómo luce nuestra plataforma virtual de posgrados, donde usted puede ingresar a todas las materias. Los documentos de ingreso, la solicitud de ingreso que se le envía, hoja de vida, copia de su cédula de identidad, copia del título de tercer nivel, certificado por la universidad que lo otorgó, histórico de notas, certificado laboral y o académico, su copia del título de bachiller y una foto tamaño carnet, ¿no? Todos estos documentos también los pueden ir entregando poco a poco mientras usted realiza sus estudios. No necesariamente debe recolectar todo esto al inicio de su programa de maestría, ¿no? ¿Cómo usted puede financiar su programa de maestría? La inversión que usted va a hacer es de $6,300 y $200 que es la inscripción inicial para poder acceder al curso propedéutico, ¿no? Actualmente contamos con un convenio con el Fondo de Cesantía, en el cual, presentando un certificado del Fondo de Cesantía, usted recibe automáticamente un 30% de descuento. También tenemos un 25% de descuento para personas que se decidan hacer un solo pago, con tarjeta de crédito puede ser, 10% a las personas que son parte del Mineduc o del MIES. También la universidad trabaja con varias entidades financieras en las cuales usted puede diferir hasta 48 meses sus pagos con tarjeta de crédito, ¿no? Esto ya depende de la tarjeta de crédito de su preferencia. Bien, los invitamos a los que estén interesados en nuestro último curso propedéutico intensivo que estamos por empezar este sábado 22 de agosto. Los que se quedaron afuera, y es que fueron muchas solicitudes nos llegaron, esta es la oportunidad, ¿no? Para que usted pueda tomar este curso propedéutico y pueda ser admitido a nuestro programa de maestría o a cualquiera de nuestros programas en educación. Para más información detallada, pues no duden en escribirnos, maestría-medioinglés@casagrande.edu.es. Muchas gracias por su atención. Estamos a las órdenes.
Muchísimas gracias, estimado Hugo, por la información brindada, al igual que también por la ayuda de nuestra compañera Roxana Ramírez, a nuestra estimada Norma Quispe y a nuestra panelista María Cristina por esta charla oportuna e instructiva. Ahora les pedimos a los asistentes que están presentes en este momento que nos acompañen unos minutos más para poderles enviar mediante el chat el link del formulario, el cual tendrán que llenar para poder obtener el certificado de asistencia al webinar de hoy día. Les rogamos con respecto al formulario ingresar bien sus correos electrónicos, que estén bien escritos, ya que obviamente alguna falla en la escritura del mismo no puede evitar que les llegue el certificado correspondiente, el cual llegará dentro de 3 a 4 días, ya que como hemos indicado anteriormente, debido a la acogida que hemos tenido por los webinars, ha habido un poco de demora en la elaboración de los mismos, ya que este sistema es automatizado, ¿no? También les pedimos llenar correctamente sus nombres, ya que tal cual como ustedes lo escriban, saldrá reflejado en el certificado. Así que les pedimos también de favor tomar en cuenta esos detalles, escribirlos bien, ya que no se realiza ninguna corrección posterior o envíos de los certificados por no llegar al correo, ¿no? Así que si no está muy seguro de haber llenado correctamente los datos en el formulario, los puede hacer el día de hoy mismo, pero antes de la medianoche, que es pues la hora en la que se da cierre al link. En este momento lo vamos a enviar el link para que puedan acceder las personas. Lo seguiremos enviando algunas veces más para que todos los presentes puedan acceder al mismo. Lo haremos nuevamente. Lo enviaremos 2 veces más y de ahí daremos cierre a la plataforma. Así que les agradecemos a todos por haber estado presentes en el webinar de hoy y bueno, los animamos también a seguirnos acompañando en los siguientes webinars.